Hey guys, the Disney Critic, here today to give you guys my thoughts on
Black Angus! Hello, and welcome to Black Angus Reviews. Thanks to Comicsgate, I've become inspired to read comics. I've read a few here and there, mainly Batman, and just today got my copy of Jawbreaker's Lost Souls. But recently, I've searched and found X-Men Messiah Complex, and have slowly been working my way through the complete House of M event, leading me to scour my library system to save money. It's because of this newfound interest in the hobby that I've become inspired. With Valentine's Day behind us, the next major holiday is St. Patrick's Day, where multitudes of people in the West culturally appropriate an Irish icon for the excuse of excessive drinking. Because of this impending holiday, my local library has displayed a multitude of Irish-themed children's books in anticipation, not realizing how problematic this is as it's only mid-February, and displaying these books now invalidates the existence of black folk. Nevertheless, I, an Angus of color, became full of glee and quickly found a book. Its title, The Leprechaun Under the Bed, sparked my curiosity, and so I found myself unable to stop reading it. Quickly, I realized why I was gravitated to the book. It's an Irish story about a leprechaun under a man's bed, pestering him incessantly. Strangely enough, there's a leprechaun affecting my life too. But he's not under my bed. He's under my skin. His name is the Disney Critic, the first SJW of international origin that I've dealt with. I became aware of the Disney Critic via discussion of EVS to the High Council. Clearly, Uncle Ethan pointing out the channel gave him added traffic. Despite that, he's barely grown, if at all. The topics of most interest to me that he covers garners a lot of dislike, and even his tame content is usually a 50-50 split. He's a sad casualty of the House of Mouse, and a blind loyalist to the rodent overlord, even stumbling over his own objective assessment in defense of the Fiend. Disney Critic is always lashing out via Twitter at us, the Fandom menace, and executes the NPC programming he has designed, discrediting the female thought if it doesn't fit with the narrative deemed acceptable. But it's okay, dear friends. By the grace of Saint Germanus, I have learned to forgive those who would transgress the Fandom menace. And thanks to this book, I see real foreshadowing for our paths. Despite the annoyance the leprechaun poses to the human in the story, he eventually comes around, even aiding the well-being of the human, eventually living in harmony, having become the best of friends. I see us, the Fandom menace, in the role of the human. And for the leprechaun, I see the Disney Critic. He may poke and prod us, angry at our existence, doing what he might to drive us away. But ultimately, we are destined to become allies, and even friends. Don't worry, Critic. I mean you no harm. Come, join us. You'll be happy you did. So without further ado, I'd like to dedicate this reading to the leprechaun under my metaphorical bed, the Disney Critic. The Leprechaun Under the Bed by Teresa Bateman, illustrated by Paul Meisel. Brian O'Shea enjoyed his privacy. A leprechaun can be alone without being lonely, he'd like to say. Indeed, he would know, for he made a snug home beneath the ground in an out-of-the-way spot. But time went on. Big, tall human people moved nearer and nearer, until one day, a man named Sean MacDonald started building a stone cottage right overhead. Brian tried leprechaun magic to stop Sean, He made Sean see headless ghosts and even a banshee rising from the foundation stones of his new cottage. But his plan backfired. "It's just like my sainted mother always told me," Sean declared in delight. "The land of Ireland is full of magic and surprises." All too soon, a fine cottage stood over Brian's home, so he built a door under Sean's bed. On moonlit nights, Brian would cobble outside. When it rained, he worked under Sean's bed, deliberately disturbing the man's sleep. Yet he didn't wish to be discovered. So, if Sean moved, Brian would whisper, "Now don't you be fretting in your wee little head. It's only the cat under the bed." After a week of restless nights, Sean decided he had to know why he wasn't sleeping well. He went to bed as usual, but though his eyes were closed, his ears were open. At midnight, the tapping began, and Sean sat bolt upright. "Now don't you be fretting your wee little head. It's only the cat under the bed," he heard from below. "Ah, of course, the cat," Sean yawned, settling back under the covers. Then his eyes flew open. "I don't have a cat," he thought. "And even if I did, whoever heard of a talking cat?" So, what was under the bed? The answer popped into his head. Sean smiled. His mother had always said that a leprechaun in the house was a fine piece of luck. Luck he couldn't afford to lose. The next morning, Sean made stirabout for breakfast and placed a bowl of it under the bed for the cat. At lunch, the bowl was empty, so he put in some stew. From that day on, every time he filled his own plate, he added a bit to the bowl under the bed. Sean was a hard-working man, but his small farm produced barely enough. Times grew hard and times grew harder until there came a day when Sean went to bed with both his stomach and the bowl empty. The next morning, a gold coin gleamed in the middle of the kitchen table. "What a blessing it is to have a cat in the house," he remarked aloud before hurrying out to buy good food. They lived well for weeks on that coin, but soon the cupboard was bare again, and another gold coin appeared. "Consider this a loan," Sean said, "until times are better. Thank you, cat." But when Sean went to buy his oatmeal and potatoes, there was more than one eyebrow raised in the village. A poor man might have saved one gold coin for hard times, but two? Gossip ran like water through fingers, and as it spread it grew. Sean MacDonald must have a whole chest of gold coins hidden in his cottage. What many tongues say, be it true or not, many ears hear. Two robbers caught wind of the tale and decided that no one deserved Sean's gossip gold more than they did. One crisp, dry morning they hid outside, waiting for Sean to leave. Then they slipped into his cottage, tossed the cupboards, and pried stones out of the fireplace. Such a clatter made Brian poke his head up from under the bed. He was shocked at what he saw, but what happened next was worse. The cottage door swung open as Sean returned for a forgotten tool. In no more time than it takes to tell, the robbers tied the poor man to a chair. "Tell us where you've hidden the gold," they bellowed. Fearing for Sean's safety, Brian banged his hammer against the door to catch the robbers' attention. "Hey now, what's that?" one of the men asked. Fearing for Brian's safety, Sean spoke quickly. "Now don't you be fretting your wee little head. It's only the cat under the bed." "Cat?" the man replied. "Well, the bed's the only place we haven't looked." As Sean worried, Brian grinned. Both robbers stuck their heads under the bed, and there they saw exactly what Brian had told them. A cat. But this was a wild cat. Eyes like lightning and claws like knives. The cat smiled at the robbers, then licked its lips as if it found the sight of them tasty. With a shriek, the men tumbled backward, then fled as if the devil himself were at their heels. Brian laughed till tears ran down his cheeks. Sean chuckled as well as he wiggled free of the rope. Then he stretched and bowed in the direction of his pillow. "'Tis a grand thing indeed, having a cat under the bed," he declared. "Aye," replied a voice from below, "and it's a pleasure having a friend above it." And they lived well and happily for the rest of their days. The end. So there you have it. A wonderful story of enemies overcoming their bias and seeing the good in each other. like the Disney Critic will in Us, the Fandom Menace. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and check out my ever-growing list of friends in the Fandom Collective. Want to follow me on Twitter and wreck some SJWs? Cool. It's @AngusReviews. Let's chat.